So from my side, let me just thank everybody that's made it this morning. And without any waste of too much time, I want to just jump into it because I've got two fantastic speakers this morning, Leigh as well as Graham, and they will tell you exactly how they're going to do this because I think it's a special treat. So without any waste of time, I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce Leigh specifically, and Leigh will introduce Graham, and I think that's the best way to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, today's talk is particularly special because of the type of level of skill we've got is just impeccable. Now, Leigh Voigt is an artist well known for her wildlife studies. She has illustrated many books, and her work has been exhibited both locally and abroad. Leigh was born in Johannesburg. She studied art at the Johannesburg School of Art. In 1967, had her first solo exhibition of wildlife batiks, and then many exhibitions of bird studies and botanical work followed thereafter. Leigh participated in the Animal in Art exhibition held at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto, Canada, and has exhibited her work in many countries. I'm talking France, the United States, England, amongst others. Leigh also has illustrated a number of award-winning books, and this particular talk is going to touch on some of the memorable experience that she's had along the way. And we've got our very top horticulturist from Kirstenbosch, Mr. Graham Duncan, who will be jumping in and also just assisting, adding that little flavor a little bit more as Leigh present this amazing talk to us. And I see everybody that's connecting with us from all over the country. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll make sure to make a mention of your comments at the end of the presentation. So from my side, John, I will see you guys on the other side of the call because I want to hand over to my two favorite people this morning. Leigh, without any waste of time, over to you, my darling.
Yeah, thank you, John. What an introduction. First of all, I just want to thank a couple of people. One is Christopher Gardner for that lovely photograph of the Hernanthus after a fire, and Kevin MacDonald for the photograph of me at the end of the flyer at the center. Thank you so much, both of you. Now, this story starts way back in 1971. My mother, Barbara Jeffrey, was living in a caravan on the shores of Lake Sabaya, park next to the research station. My parents had sold their house in Craigie Park, having decided to leave the city and return to nature, to paint, to photograph, to explore, and to do some research for Barbara's book on the wildflowers of Natal. Let me just go down. That is the book that we're actually going to be talking about. These are the two books together that was in the title. The first one was the one that Barbara conceived these many, many years ago, 45 years ago. There's Barbara. She was probably about in her 70s, early 70s. And this was her Shores of Lake Sabaya deciding to stay. She stayed on in Maputa land because she had tasted freedom. Her children were grown up and had lives of their own. The research station provided her with backup she needed, and she wasted no time in getting to work. The first watercolors were of Crinum delagoense, Stulmani delagoense, and its extraordinary seed pods. Then there were the Spadopsis. This is a photograph by Neil Crouch of this amazing flower head, and many others that she did. She was really wanting to learn about the plants, and she had no books. There were a few books about gardening, and a few South African flowers, but nothing that she really wanted to know. She would just take any flower that she found, clarines, because as she saw them in the wild, she didn't know what they were. To see something like that, photographed by Neil Crouch, she became very, very curious. Then she met Cynthia and Ted Giddy. They had been regular visitors to Lake Sabaya, and they became very, very good friends. Many interesting people, visited the research station at that time under the leadership of Professor Mike Bruton and his wife Carolyn. Scientists, botanists, adventurers, eccentrics, Barbara met and got to know them all very, very well. That was also where two key figures in the making of the Amaryllis books. She met Arthur and Alice Ford, passionate plant people who inspired her, and through the years of their friendship collected the plants she needed. They had a greenhouse in Johannesburg where Alice's skill at inducing plants to flower was legendary. There's Alice. Throughout the 70s, the poor conditions of the roads, the unreliability of the postal service, and the scanty information available made it difficult for Arthur to conduct his research for specimens. They worked from lists supplied to them by various herbariums, and Barbara began to correspond with people like Mrs. Maeve, Ines Verdoorn, and many, many others, Robert Dyer, Dave Hardy, Winter, lots of them. They always got the required permits and formed a network of specialist growers throughout the country. Many letters were written, and such patience was required. I have a large wooden kist with all these letters, a well-documented record of decades of meticulous, dedicated labor, accomplished by only those who have the passion and unlimited energy. Imagine what they could have achieved if they'd had the internet. She had already published Trees and Shrubs at the Botanical Front when my siblings and I were growing up. Then she published the Aloe book. Flushed with the success of her Aloe book, which was published in 1969, Barbara maintained that if you really want to know something about something, you write a book about it. After a few months of living in her caravan, the rigors of camping began to pall, and Barbara thought some civilization would make her life easier. So when Cynthia invited her to come and live with them in Umlaas Road, she did not hesitate. The Giddies ran an indigenous nursery which provided Barbara with many of the summer-growing species. As their search spread to other parts of the country, plants were collected by Arthur. Barbara recorded what she could, and then Alice would grow them onto the flowering stage. The flowering plants would then be sent back to Barbara to finish the plate. When she was satisfied with her painting, she would send the plant to the National Herbarium in Pretoria, now called the South African National Biodiversity Institute, not only for confirmation of the identification, but for them to keep the specimen in their collection. In April of 1973, Barbara decided it was time to move on. Living with the Giddies had been an interlude which she called the Giddy interlude, chaotic, stimulating, fruitful, and fun. The Natal Wildflowers was nearly ready for publication, and she was now anxious to make a real headway with the Amaryllis book. While she was in Cape Town, she met Rhoda and Hendrik van Sale, who invited her to come and stay with them because they ran a nursery in Constantia, which grew the rare and at that time relatively unstudied Gethalis, amongst others. This was where Barbara had her most creative period, traveling with them, searching for unrecorded plants, and where her book, Spring and Winter Flowering Bulbs of the Cape, was completed. Hendrik now lives in Nibotville and has become an authority on the many species of amaryllis growing there, amongst them the much photographed annual display of Brunsvigia bosmania. Lovely picture of Hendrik and Neil McGregor. They went on many trips together, visiting people like Neil McGregor of Glen Lyon in Nibotville, pictured here with Hendrik. It also has this Nibotville, the most wonderful people, places, history, evocative, descriptive names. Douse the Glimmer, I think is one of this. Barbara was the perfect traveling companion, always ready with snippets of information about the geology, soil types, the height of the mountains, and names of rivers. She loved the open road and could sleep anywhere, in a rough tent, backpacker's barn, even in a motor car. The crew boxes were filled with delicious parcels of sandwiches, sausages, cheese, dried fruit, a bottle or two of good red wine, and a thermos of coffee. I travelled with my mother often, and maybe 20 times, and got to know all those characters. Elias Brewer, who lived along the Grasperk Road, and her daughter Olive, who made beautiful bread. Marvelous people and places. Luke Picotso, the Springbok Cafe. Nita Cole and her complete oneness with the plants that she grew and loved. Mesclip, Fontaine, marvelous places. This is one of my favorites, the Hofburg. And it's such a wonderful area. I mean, spectacular scenery. It's beautiful. Look at that. Let's go and walk there. The approaching storm near Caledon. We also went to a very special place. This is one of my favorite places, the Richtersveld. We walked endlessly, and not come across a single soul. Barbara's network of like-minded traveling companions widened. People such as Kevin, Frank, David and Fiona, Mike, George and Penny, Vincent and Jane, and many, many others. And also a bond was established with those professional botanists who willingly and generously offered advice and information. These Neyman, John Manning, John Walk, Amaryllis LaRue, and of course our favorite Graham Duncan. In fact, our travels took us throughout South Africa, and we had much fun and laughter at the hazards of things like Moordenaars Karoo, Mootverloor, an aardvark hole in the middle of nowhere. And then we get lost. With puzzling Macon, Algeria. I remember phoning John and saying, "Where the hell am I? You gave me the wrong directions." Neither, and so on. And of course, a wealth of new flowers. Fantastic flowers, fields and fields, not only of the daisies, but in between all these wonderful bulbs that would pop up. Now, being nearer to the National Botanic Institute would be an advantage, and perhaps she was missing the support of her family, all of whom lived in or near Johannesburg. So she found a spacious cottage in Blackheath, and I lived close by in Northcliffe with my husband Carrie and our two small children, Max and Walter. She continued to work very hard, and her output was almost unbelievable. She was able to capture the jizz of a plant within an hour or two, and once each stage had been recorded, she would finish the final plate from her sketches and watercolors. I tried not to interrupt her too often, sensing she would rather be painting the flowers, which do not wait. And so it was by osmosis, while I watched her work, that I slowly learned the names of many plants she was painting. 2 years later, she found a house in Parkview, where she ensconced herself upstairs while her eccentric friend Norman occupied the lower floor. Norman's flamboyant nature and colourful decor did much for Barbara's state of mind. Norman was a compulsive entertainer, and streams of interesting people passed through the doors of number 23. One day, two people arrived at the house, Doug McMurtry and Sandra Muller. Doug worked at the Botanic Gardens in Emmarentia, and Sandra was an avid gardener, passionate about zoetanthus. Both became Barbara's very good friends. If at any time Barbara became disillusioned by the slow pace of progress of the Amaryllis book, something would happen to reinforce her determination, such as in 1981, when the Stromeria was named after her. That little plant there, Stromeria barbara. That's her painting. Years of painstaking work followed, much travel, many adventures, plenty of hard work, difficult times, and elation when it went well. These are a couple of the amazing paintings that she did. This is the one that is on the cover of the big Amaryllis book. Through the years, we tried to support her. As the time went by, she often told me she had that hollow feeling of dread in her stomach, of impending loss, that her Amaryllidaceae book would never get published. Her life's work, her passion, the reason for waking up in the morning. Key people who have been such staunch supporters of her and her work had died. Ted and Cynthia, Arthur and Alice, Everard Reed, and most of those brilliant botanists with whom she had been corresponding in those early days. Through the years, we tried to support her, to encourage her. The time passed, and the project faltered. By 1998, her health had begun to fail, and it was clear that she would not live to see her magnum opus published. It was heartbreaking. Just a few weeks before she died, I gave her my word that I would see her book finished and published. Disillusioned and exhausted, she put the stash of watercolors in her cupboard, and that was where I found them. With the death of my mother, I inherited a project which was to give me an insight into the world of academia, test my stamina, my patience, and my resolve. I had to feel my way cautiously and gain the trust of all her contacts, so hard won, in a field riddled with naysayers and bureaucracy. As Michael once said, it was like tiptoeing through a labyrinth of egos. Initially, all went well. I got to know many exceptional people and thoroughly enjoyed traveling down to Cape Town each time a new plant had to be painted. Taking over projects about which I knew very little did not concern me too much at the time, because although I did not know much about Amaryllis, I did know about making books. I knew what I wanted anyway, and certainly what Barbie would have wanted. The years dragged on, and the light at the end of the tunnel never seemed to get any closer. Graham Duncan, author of many, many books, specialist horticulturist and knight in shining armor, came to my rescue. I had no words adequate enough to convey my admiration and gratitude for this capable, I'm going to cry, and utterly reliable human being. Now, it will take hours if I told you about all the interesting adventures I had during the years I'd worked on the book, both books, in fact. So I'll tell you about one treasure hunt, which is but one of many unforgettable episodes in my quest, which began as a normal trip to the Cape to paint a new Amaryllis, which turned out to be a search that no one who hasn't been smitten would understand. Harry took me to the airport, as usual, grumbling all the way, not able to understand my need to spend all that time, effort and money just to paint one flower. Can't you just get someone to photograph it for you? No, I can't. The Amaryllidaceae was one we had been searching for years. The following day, I completed the painting of the Amaryllis and was just packing up for the night when Graham phoned to say that a single flowering specimen of marine Amaryllidaceae had been located. Trouble was, it was growing on a farm on the other side of Prince Albert, closer to Beaufort West, apparently in a rockery in the garden on the very farm on which it was discovered by the owner of the farm, Pat Marinkowitz, after whom it was named. So on Thursday, 11th of April, 2011, the day before Good Friday, I set off, sore throat, temperature, headache notwithstanding. I arrived in Prince Albert just after lunch, booked in at the Swartberg Hotel, not knowing what time I would see a bed that night, but liking the idea that one would be waiting for me. The Prince Albert Valley is tucked between two parallel rows of dramatic mountains, a lost and forgotten valley, covered with gnarled grey trees and tufts of spiky bushes. I longed to get out of the car and walk, smell the earth and find an artifact or two, but I still had to find the farm, paint the plant, and drive back to Prince Albert. The small hired car handled the middle monkey well, and I arrived at the farmhouse in the early afternoon. Lydia and her sheepdog came to the car to greet me. Again, I explained the purpose of my visit and how important it was that I paint the plant from life. She did not seem surprised and said many people came to visit just to see the rare and special marine. The father had been a collector of plants and recognized that the marine growing in the small patch in a remote area behind the distant hill was different from all the others in the area. He sent it to Ernst von Jaarsveld, who described it and named it after the man who had discovered it. And here it was, not in a rockery, but in a large asbestos container with many other plants, Amaryllis, Stapeliads, Hawathias, and a large Queen of the Night cactus, a fairly indiscriminate collection. I was given a chair, I took a wooden shawl out of my suitcase, wrapped myself up and started drawing. Filthy, pretty pink flower umbel in pristine condition waved about in a blur. For 2 hours I sat and recorded as much as I could, but the complicated nature of each petal was such that my task was almost impossible. It was getting colder. I was about to give up in despair when Darnie, Lydia's husband, arrived from his day in the fields. The salt of the earth type. He saw my distress and said he would dig up the bulb for me, so that I could finish it in warmth and comfort. My God, dig it up and give it to me. Yes, please. I jumped up and hugged him. It took me nanoseconds to pack up and get into the car and be on my way. The Karoo twilight is eerie and unforgiving, and yet the long drive back to my pre-booked bed was a very attractive prospect indeed. The coveted plant sat in the passenger seat so that I could protect it and look at it from time to time, and I arrived at the hotel as most of the long weekend supper guests were internet. No one there could have guessed just how elated I felt about having a treasure now in my room upstairs. That night I slept for a solid 10 hours. Next morning I drove back to Kirstenbosch, plant wedged securely in the floor behind me. I was happy in the knowledge that the following day I would be back home in Mpumalanga at my own studio table. Next morning, trouble. From 4 a.m., the sound of whooping it up came pulsing through my window. The Two Oceans Marathon was in progress, that insane section of society that believes running is good for you, streaming in their thousands past my window when I needed to get to the airport. Road closed till 1:30 p.m., the policeman said. But my flight is at 11 a.m., I said. Tough, he said. Oh dear, I said. Anyway, he led me through by stopping some stragglers, all good-natured and waving. Plant and ourselves got to the airport in good time, but with a fair amount of anxiety as to how I would get my huge suitcase and precious Plant through the lifts, escalators, toilets, and x-ray scans of 2 airports. Swartberg Hotel, and Plant on the seat next to me in the aeroplane. The first leg, Cape Town to Oliver Tambo. I had the whole row to myself. Plant had the seat next to me. I had only 20 minutes to get off this plane and onto the other. My stomach was in a knot. The little XA express plane to Nelspruit was empty, so Plant again had a seat to herself. Very special little Plant. This is the Plant I was drawing. The drawing of the marine, and the painting of the marine. I spent the whole of the warm, low-felt Sunday in my own studio painting the intricate pink petals, wasting no time, knowing that minutes counted as the warmth would make the delicate petals work. I was pleased with the result. The nature of the flower suited the trace of OCD running through my veins, being complicated, pretty, and full of twists and turns, nuances of delicate pink so subtle that my sore throat and flu were forgotten. However, there comes a time when one has to stand up and stretch. That was when I decided to open the reference file and read a bit more about this rare little gem, growing in only one place in the whole world, this plant I had tracked down and retrieved with great determination. A photocopy of Leigh Voigt Hillhorst's colour illustration of marine marincovits fell out of the folder onto my desk. I picked it up and stifled a scream. It was totally, utterly, and completely different from the plant I had carried across the continent. No curved stem, no frilly flowers, and the colour was all wrong. I just stared at the pot, then my painting, then Leig's painting. Then I read the description and found the type specimen on the internet. So I phoned Graham, who nearly fell out of the tree he was busy pruning. He was devastated, speechless. A few days later, he saved the situation by sending me a photograph of what looked like a miniature pink agapanthus, and I cobbled together a painting of this elusive little monster. There she is. Eventually, I was sent a bulb, and got the leaves, and that's her. The painting that I had wasted my time on was appropriately named marine humulus, occurring in dense colonies over widespread parts of the southwestern Cape, common as dirt and spectacularly underwhelming. For her sins, she now graces the cover of the field guide to the Amaryllis family. This is the artwork. This is the type specimen. This is the artwork. I don't know if you can see it clearly. You have to do a larger painting and then work on the right-hand side, so that the other can be the back, the wraparound for the back. There it is. After many more similar experiences and months of toil, highs and lows, in March 2016, much to my family's delight and my relief, the Amaryllidaceae book was finished, the big book, my mother's book, and I spent a few weeks with my beloved friend and indefatigable designer, Tertia, putting the final pages together, choosing a paper and deciding on the cover. The original paintings had all been scanned by the incomparable Andreas of Silvertone. The final PDF had been made. We booked our slot with TNY in Singapore for the printing. Press check. I had no idea what a press check was. Tertia, who had been to 3 press checks before and warned me that it was intensive and taxing. I didn't know what she meant. My son Max, my go-to Superman for anything remotely daunting, came with us for fun and a laugh. Picture this. The industrial suburb of an already overcrowded city, overgrown with rampant vegetation, steamy, suffocatingly hot and humid. Huge building, nearly the size of 2 rugby fields, the smell of printing inks, the constant clanking of Heidelberg presses like steam trains, spewing out piles of colourful images on shiny paper, soon to be stacked, trimmed, folded, stitched, and bound and shipped. The signing off, I learned from Jeevan, the production manager, would take place every 15 minutes for 3 to 4 days, non-stop, day and night. We were shown our quarters for the day, regardless of the fact that we had booked into a luxury hotel 20 minutes drive away. There was going to be no leisurely bath-taking, no sleep in the large soft bed, in fact, no sleep anywhere at all. The small room consisted of 2 small sofas, a blanket each because the air conditioner was always set on cold, a computer, a fridge, and a kettle. Every hour for 3 or 4 days, someone would knock on the glass door, and we would follow him to the print room. This bustling, noisy, smelly, machine-filled cauldron of activity, and pen in hand scrutinizing the first pages of the hour's print run. We checked for smudges, alignment, small blemishes, over-inking, and colour matches. Once we were both satisfied, each double-sided sheet was perfect. I signed my name and we would make our way back past the canteen and up the spiral staircase to our barracks. This regime went on from 9 a.m. on Monday morning to late on Wednesday afternoon with a 45-minute break each day for lunch. Signing off. Exercise with. We weren't really allowed to photograph, but one of the machine minders kindly took that photograph. I mean, I really could, I had to record it. It was extraordinary. And that's a small section of it. There's Tertia, checking thoroughly. There you can see in the background. Goes on forever. This now is interesting. This next little picture, Max organized this for us. This was when the Amaryllis family book was had been in production and was now being shipped by the same printers to South Africa. This was during COVID, and we watched our cargo ship, coming through to land in Durban. It was really quite exciting and terrifying at the same time. At last, in 2016, the first Amaryllidaceae books arrived, and although I was not responsible then for receiving them, Umdau's press was, it was nevertheless thrilling to see them in piles on the various launch pads. There they are. Those are the sponsors editions with beautiful leather-bound covers and slipcases to match. This particular launch was in Port Elizabeth, I can't pronounce it, at the GPI gallery. And now here are the launches. We had such fun with these launches. There were many in all different places, galleries and in bookshops in Cape Town, Franschhoek, Kimberley, Johannesburg, Knysna, Port Elizabeth, White River, and Durban. We were on the road for weeks at a time. It was such fun. Bookshops, lots of coolie, signing. And we were on the road for weeks at a time, me always choosing the road less traveled. My favorite thing to do. Wonderful places. Thank you. You may be interested to know that all the original paintings from the Amaryllidaceae of Southern Africa, and in fact, the recent ones that I did, the Amaryllis book, were purchased by the Norval Foundation in Cape Town, and they can be viewed by appointment. These are some more of the, this was in Grand Provence, the gallery. And some Carruthers, Mark Reed, David McDonald. This was done in Cape Town waterfront. And this is a wonderful team. This is the Umdau's press team. Putty on the left, Francois, Holbrink, Graham, of course, and Tertia. Now that sign, I don't know if you can read what it says there, but it says Achtung. I should have taken heed. Watch out, it means watch out. By the way, the whole project was kickstarted by Quirty and Alex when they saw Barbara's early paintings spread out on the floor of her flat in Johannesburg, many, many years, probably late 70s. My own publishing company, Galley Press, much later produced and published the second book, The Field Guide to the Amaryllis family. Now, as soon as I had settled after the rigorous couple of months on the road, I started planning the book about the book. It is not one that has been mentioned so far. So much has happened in those 45 years that I thought it would be useful to document the letters, the pitfalls, and the emotional roller coaster ride both Barbie and I had encountered along the way. Told of the passion, the pain, people, and perseverance behind the making of the Amaryllidaceae of Southern Africa. I spent a year or so working on it, and Tertia again did the layout. It was a 750-page, unique record of the trials and tribulations we've had in the sourcing of material, the personalities of the participants, and the hazards and highlights of collaborations. The book was enriched with sketches and scribbles, unfinished paintings, discarded watercolors, photographs, and letters by and to plant people, both professional and amateur, eminent and obscure. I had employed no less than 5 editors to make sure there were no pitfalls, no cause for litigation, no egos dented or feelings hurt. Final PDF was made and sent to the same printer, T&Y, in Singapore. But the butterflies in my tummy that had stirred for months started to crash about and causing a tsunami in my stomach. On the 18th of May, 2017, I woke with a terrible headache. It lasted a whole day and well into the night. At midnight, I came to the agonizing decision that I must withdraw the publication of the book about the book. I made the urgent phone call to the printer to remove the plates from the press, where the machine minder was ready to press the green button. Jimmy and Caroline were kind and understanding, but of course deeply disappointed. They thought it was a very pretty book. It was a traumatic and excruciatingly lonely time for me. It had to be my decision and mine alone. A lot of time and money had been wasted. That night, I slept the sleep of a carefree puppy, knowing that I had done the right thing. In the morning, I woke again with a splitting headache, went to town to do some domestic chores, and at about 11 o'clock, while driving on a quiet country road, had a blackout and drove straight into the oncoming traffic at a busy T-junction. 2 other vehicles were badly damaged, but no one seriously hurt. My Subaru was a complete write-off. I was taken by ambulance to hospital, spent a day there being x-rayed, scanned, and monitored. Nothing appeared to be broken or punctured, but I had a mother of all headaches, some nasty bruises, cuts on my head, and concussion. Before I could resume normal life, I had to find out why I had passed out, so I went to see a cardiologist. He diagnosed supraventricular tachycardia, and an appointment was made with an electrocardiologist for the following week. I flew down to Cape Town to the brand new state-of-the-art Christian Barnard Hospital, where an ablation was performed. I flew home 2 days later and limped around the house in a state of bemused confusion and discomfort. Everyone became instant heart experts and told me it was pure stress, it was overwork, it was this, it was that. I knew in my gut that I had made the correct decision, and that all I needed was a bit of time to get over. I was told to sleep every afternoon, something I hadn't done since I was a baby. I had physio for my bruises and cancelled all future projects until I could gather my thoughts. Bought a new Subaru. Every so often I look at the big Amaryllidaceae book and wonder how I gave birth to an elephant. At least the book about the book is not available. It was withdrawn permanently from publication and will never be printed. The Amaryllidaceae of Southern Africa, what we affectionately call the Big Book, received glowing reviews from all quarters, and I should have been content, but I wasn't. I knew I could do better. Or if not better, at least a more practical, more manageable version. There are those who need to know not only the name of the plant, but a bit about the history of its naming, the taxonomy, the etymology, and why it grows where it does. Is it rare or common? Can it be cultivated? All the plant people who have helped in one way or another with the first book are embedded in the foundations of this concise and updated and we hope useful field guide. So against all odds and mounting opposition from my family, I plucked up some much-needed courage and contacted Graham again. To my absolute amazement and unbridled joy, he agreed and we set to work immediately. Work began in earnest. I'm not sure how you see this, but this is very fragmented to me. It's not quite like that. We double-checked type specimens. We did many more paintings to get every recorded specimen illustrated. We rearranged the order of species in the layout as advised, in biomes instead of alphabetically. It made so much more sense. The book is divided into 11 biomes with a photograph typical of the area and a map of the region at the beginning of each chapter. For instance, if the reader happens to be in the grassland biome, they would only need to look in those pages marked with the color matching color on the map. That is one of the main maps at the beginning of each chapter. And there you will see that is, if you live in that area, that's where you live. Yes, of course, you bought it in the nursery. But it's important that is, and the distribution is so specific to be a determining factor in identification. So it's very important to know where the plant comes from, its location. Now, survival of accounts of these plants is absolutely remarkable. I could specifically ask photographers for the plants in areas that were so remote and so difficult to access because they were there at the right time. Look at these. I mean, look at the amazing crack in a rock. The heat must be incredible. Wonderful picture of Hosseini. The mountain. I also decided we had to have photographs, lots of photographs, and I contacted at least 500 photographers and searched the internet for the best possible images, preferably with plants in their natural habitat. I wanted Southern Africa to look as if it was devoid of humans, just wild, pristine areas filled with abundant flowers. Photographs are taken by photographers who happen to be at the right place at the right time. Happily, most photographers responded immediately to my request. We have chosen only the very best photographs from thousands submitting. Here are some of my champion people. Cameron McMaster, Helen Cohen, Jed Coco, Martin Begans, Neil Crouch, Cowan, Andrew Hankey, Adam Sane. What a delightful and dedicated bunch of people are the photographers of natural history subjects. Sorry. Here more. These magnificent plants I would never have been able to find myself. Graham would have them growing in Kirstenbosch, so we had to get them from photographers who are in the field. And they should look as they look like that, tatty and in distress in places. There's the seeds of the Kukumkanka. Then continue about that one. I wish I knew who the photographer of that photograph was. I couldn't include it in the book because I did not know the person who photographed that. I include it now because it's so spectacular. Those are like little gold flecks on petals. I think it's the Kukumkanka. Sorry, yeah, the Kukumkanka, the Geckolis. Because there's pretty little petticoats and extraordinary leaves. My main aim was to make every single person in this country passionately proud of our wonderful flora and therefore become fiercely protective of their habitats. Pristine areas, farms, parks, secluded cliffs, and nature reserves in which these plants grow. And for that, we needed to produce a really, really beautiful book. There are habitats under threat that should be earmarked and protected by every means possible, because the encroachment of human activity will see an end to our natural heritage, and we must not let this happen. These are just a few of my paintings which I did now, the new ones, with the Amaryllis book. In Graham's own words, the four primary aims of this book are: number one, stimulate the greater appreciation for diversity amongst the more than 260 members of the Amaryllidaceae family in Southern Africa. Number two, draw attention to the perilous position of the decline in the number of its taxa in the wild and to the urgent need to conserve ever-dwindling habitats, to assist readers with the identification of the plants, and number four, to encourage their cultivation and propagation to legally acquired material. The back of the field guide is a list of nurseries who stock the Amaryllidaceae, bulbs and seeds. A little bit more about that later. Now, this truck loaded with books in January 1921 brought the new Amaryllis field guide. It had been during COVID, and we've been able to work very hard because we all worked at home. And then at last, they had difficulty printing in Singapore because they had only short staff, but eventually it came through. And my team of three, it's Graham, Tertia, and I, we resolved at the beginning of doing this book to retain total control of the concept, the text, the editing, design, paper binding, feel, and heft of the product, thereby resisting the easy route of approaching an established publisher to handle the taxa of things, and believed this was the only way we could produce the book that would be unsurpassed in every aspect. But not to say real publishers don't do that. Of course they do. But in today's world, they were more likely to have budget constraints and deadlines. And I wanted Tertia to design it in her own way, and Graham to have as much time as he needed to produce perfect text. It did involve things that I'm not used to, getting import permits, forklifts, storage facilities, and so on. There they are with books in our storage facility, Lakes and Bar. Here I must mention some personalities who have been part of the production from the beginning. Doug McMurtry, and the great-great-grandson of Sir Joshua Banks, alias Mark Banks, the inevitable comedian who made us laugh after COVID, at three of the launches of the field guide, and the astonishing Tertia in the middle, Pete Kirsten, Mary Duncan, editor, John Rourke, someone I could call upon for advice at any time. And here is beloved Kirsten Bosch, encircled by a rainbow. I hope it's in circles of the time immemorial. Here is the little cottage I stayed in, the little stone cottage at the bottom by the gate. And I was privileged to stay there. Thank you, Ryan, for that, and Rosemary. And where Graham and I made plans where we sat for days at a time, surrounded by rare and valuable plants. The remarkable Graham Duncan, while working on the field guide, had been working on his monograph, The Amaryllis and extraordinary books. The rather odd words and surrounding territories in the title may confuse some readers, but they are a respectful nod to the cartographer Fred Jeffy, a distant relative of mine who drew the first maps of the Transvaal and referred to areas through which he travelled as territories rather than provinces. But who knows what political changes could have occurred in years to come. Lots know no boundaries anyway. There were 14 new paintings included in the field guide, bringing the total number to 261. They are also included in the collection at the Norwell Foundation, making it a unique heritage archive of botanical paintings of one single taxonomic family. This is the Kirsten Bosch bookshop where both books will be available. Graham's text, accurate and dense, deliciously informative. Each species has a scientific description, a derivation of its name, a brief history of its discovery, its distribution, habitat, and life cycle and conservation status. He also brings the reader invaluable advice on how to grow each species of Amaryllis. Graham in the field, and Graham has a special feeling for chickens. And in fact, he's really quite intelligent in spite of the company he keeps. Thought he might have one on his lap today. There is a chapter in the field guide entitled Survival Strategies. It is written in Graham's inimitable scientific poetry, but in essence it just tells me that these plants are stupendous. They are survivors. Did you know that Declivia mirabilis has roots up to 20 millimeters in diameter? Or more. That a Crinum graminica bulb can be 19 centimeters in diameter, 20 centimeters in height, and weighs no less than 150 pounds. at 68.3 kilograms. And that was from Arthur. That was a bulb that he had. So not only is it illegal to collect bulbs from the wild, but it is morally reprehensible. If transplanted, 9 times out of 10 they will die. Graham says, and this is very specific and complicated, that some plants' life cycle vary from area to area, commencing their growth cycle in response to an increase in night air and soil temperature and day length in combination with some rain. So if you try and grow something like in even slightly different conditions, it will suffer and most likely die. Some bulbs need fire to flower, so you will have to buy a bulb from the nursery. So you will buy a bulb from the nursery and wonder why it never flowers. So please leave the plants where they are. Leave them to Mother Nature to tend and look after, and for other humans to see and enjoy. Read this channel, it's absolutely fascinating. There's Graham and me at one of our launches. Both of us very relieved that it is now over. Or is it? As years go by, there will be new information coming to light and new species will be discovered. There might be fairly lively discussions and differing opinions regarding the information presented in this book, but that is the nature of science. It is as living as the plants themselves, and it is our wish that future generations of plant experts will see to it that material is updated in subsequent editions. This is a picture of Scodoxus multiflorus subspecies multiflorus of Geraldine. This one by, sorry, that one was a multiflorus in Botswana by Rob Scott. This is the one of Scodoxus multiflorus, Joachim Louis. On a personal level, I cannot but love these plants. Oh, I've got to love these extraordinary bulb beings. I mean, when you see a wild bush and you see plants like that, it's incomparable anywhere in the world, unfortunately. My favorite is that one we use to apply. This is one of my favorites. The Gephilus are so special, very temperamental, almost spiteful little plants. They just flower when your back is turned. This is Gephilus campanulata. I took this photograph. Neither of them. This is Memphis albifloss, photographed by Tony Novello. I mean, look how it's living in this minute crack. Memphis humilis, subspecies Hirsutus by John Leroy. And they can grow in pans of seasonal water, providing a once in a lifetime display never to be forgotten. This is Pinum Carolo Schmidti by Silke Ruchheimer. I think it is the sheer variability of this family that appeals to me most. Once I had fulfilled my promise to my mother, I realized that it was not for her that I was being a field guide, but for myself. It was a journey I thoroughly enjoyed, and I hope will end this way. In conclusion, I would like to thank 3 people from the bottom of my heart: Graham Duncan, Tertia van Rensburg, and Pippa Parker in particular, of Penguin Random House, who kindly agreed to take over the marketing and distribution. I actually have a string of people to thank, but one is as important as the other, building blocks in what grew to be a massive team effort, originating from one determined, eccentric, dark-haired woman on the shores of Lake Sabine. And here I hope I can hand over to somebody who will tell you how you can order this book and to ask any questions. Graham is there to answer any questions about the plants themselves, because if there is an expert, he's him. Thank you.
Leigh, what an amazing presentation. And I'm about to switch my video on, but I thought perhaps maybe give Graham just an opportunity to make some presentation comments just before we go officially into our Q&A. Graham, just over to you in terms of overview of the presentation. Thanks.
Well, John, I would like to thank Leigh for his superb presentation. I would have expected nothing less. Lovely photographs and I hope that the new distributors of this book will do us proud. Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you, Graham.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. What an amazing presentation, Leigh. I was looking at some of the pictures that you had on the presentation, and I was looking at the car wreck. I was thinking, oh my goodness, how did you even survive that? I think that is the first thing that we should just touch on. It's just an absolute miracle. Do you recall just moments before the accident, and perhaps maybe just the moments after that?
I recall nothing at all before, nothing. And I don't even know for how long. I had been virtually unconscious, maybe asleep, or I had no idea. But the next thing I realized, there was somebody looking through the window, and I had the tarmac on my right-hand side, too close to my face, I thought. And somebody was asking me if I could wiggle my toes. And I thought that was hilarious. What on earth would he do something like that for? And only then did I realize what had happened. I don't remember much about it at all.
Wow.
It happened.
This is an absolute true testament that, when it's not your time, it's not your time. And we are all put on this earth to serve. And most certainly, your journey has displayed that level of service that you've given. I'm just going to say, just a few things coming out from the comments. But maybe perhaps to, start everybody off in terms of general questions. Let's just take us through the journey. You're finishing off back in the 1960s, and you're choosing a study program. What inspired you to get into arts, and the transition from art into wildlife into beautiful botanical art that you've done? What happened there?
My mother happened there. I had made a promise to her, and I honestly thought that I could do what she had started. There was so much material already done. I thought I could finish it in maybe a year, maybe 2, 5 at the most. Well, look at the time now. I mean, it's just finished. It was 45 years out of my life, and I can't really make that up. You don't go looking for that kind of work. That work finds you, and you cannot let it go until it's finished. It's something that is extraordinary, and only people who have a passion for a subject, they will not be daunted. They will not be put off by anybody saying it's too difficult, it's too much, and you'll do it. You'll finish it. I used to do other things on the side. I mean, I used to do paintings. I did a couple of exhibitions. No, I did other work as well. This was when I got a flower, I would drop everything and fly down to Cape Town or to wherever, Bloemfontein, wherever that flower was, I'd go there, because paint from life is essential. Now, ones that I had from the photographs, I found have a stiltedness to them, and once I got the real plant in front of me, live and fresh, immediately, it's not a problem.
Wow.
But now I want to know what I want to do, and I want to start painting again. So it won't be flowers.
Graham, Leigh, I think that's just absolutely fascinating. Let me bring you back quickly into this discussion. I think I've seen a synopsis of you in a way that I've never seen before. Firstly, I've never seen men and chicken cuddle so comfortably together. I don't know whether Leigh did that deliberately.
No.
What happened there?
And well, his name is Horace.
Graham.
And I've still got him.
Wow. Well, I've never seen a chicken just be so comfortable. So is that what you do? Do you do a small scale farming back in your backyard?
Well, I've got these special chickens they call pecans.
Yeah.
Originally bred in China with, they're dwarfs with feathers on the feet, but they're not silkies. It's a special kind of chicken.
Yeah.
And I get the occasional eggs, but only in summer.
Wow. Sure. Absolutely amazing. So no, it's an absolute feat. But I have to just also commend you on just your level of expertise And just perhaps maybe to put you a little bit on the spot while we still have everybody on online.
Right.
Graham, I mean, the quality of your work and your expertise speaks for itself. What were some of the difficult moments that you encountered working with Leigh? I loved how she diplomatically said, we worked with a team and we had to make sure that when we publish, emotions aren't running high and we're not offending anybody's ego.
Yes.
So that told me quite a lot about Leigh and just her level of cooperation and bringing a team together.
Yes.
But you, in terms of your experience working with her?
No, well, it's just that she's a perfectionist, and sometimes she'd have two paintings of the same thing, and she would want to use one of them, and I would want the other one. You know what I'm saying? Like the Amaryllis, for example, I wanted the other one.
Yeah.
No, that was about all. That was about the worst of it.
Yeah, I like that. And just in terms of conceptualization, putting everything together, how long does a project like this take? Leigh, from conceptualization, meeting up with an expert like Graham, going into publication. What would you say a round figure is in terms of a time frame?
45 years. Seriously. My mum started this in 1971 and it took until 2020.
Wow.
22 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, that's how long it took to do both those books.
My goodness.
One of the things is that plants have different seasons, so you can't do one specimen in one go. You do it in 3 different sections. The flowering plant, the bulb, and then the leaves, and sometimes you wait for the seeds. So it's an ongoing situation with these things. I should do other things like steam trains or something, much easier.
Wow. Graham, that comment, I want to definitely get your comment on that one. Let me just take 2 questions quickly that are coming up on the Q&A. Eric saying, Leigh, what will you paint if you don't paint flowers? Is there anything else that you perhaps into? Let me take another one quickly from Nicole. Nicole saying, thank you for a lovely talk and photos. Except for visiting a botanical garden, where and when should I go see a good variety of these beauties in nature? Besides your typical national botanical space like we have at Kirstenbosch. What do you have to say to that, Leigh?
Well, Graham can answer the second question. I'll answer the first one. I love painting people. I do portraits and I love doing people, but I've done paintings of trees. I've had many exhibitions of trees and of cattle. I've done the Nguni cattle. So those are my things. I wish I had another 50 years. So I probably will do all sorts of other things. But portraits probably would be my favorite thing to do.
Oh, nice. Very interesting. And do you have like your own self-portrait? Because I find a lot of artists are quite good at looking at Mr. Graham, for instance, and, putting a nice sketch. But do you do a self-portrait? Have you done one of yourself?
I've never done one of myself. No, I haven't.
That would be interesting. And we want to see that. And in fact, that would be the measure of your level of talent. You look at it and say, is this really me?
Are you giving me a challenge? I think Graham should rather answer Nicole's question.
Graham, over to you.
Where to find the plants.
So, it depends which species you're looking for, because they flower, at various times of the year, but mainly in autumn. So if you can get to the Van Rijnsdorp, Nevatville area in about early April, then you can see those spectacular displays of pink Brunswickias. But, they occur throughout the Southern Africa region. So it just depends which species you're looking for. And especially after some rain, you can see those Brunswickias, which are really the most spectacular display near Nevatville and Van Rijnsdorp.
Sure. No, thanks for that, Graham. And I think we are also headed into a very special time of the season. Heading into spring. I think the West Coast way, some amazing places there. And in fact, Hantam. I know we said other than botanical gardens, but Hantam has some really special. Some special plants over there. If one has time to drive out that side. Let me just take two more questions and perhaps maybe wrap it up. From one of individuals joining us on the call saying, why did you decide to arrange, and I'm not specifically, I'm assuming it's Leigh who will assist us with this one. Why did you decide to arrange the paints according to biomes? And are there plants that overlap biomes, for instance? And if so, how are these treated in the book?
Yes, good question. The biomes I found very important because plants really do like to grow in an area which is suited to the climate, to the weather, to the aspect, and so on. Where they overlap, we've put a little notification underneath each map to say where they are. So you can then turn to page or whatever, and you'll find them in that area as well. So that is well dealt with. I think the biomes is far better than alphabetical, because alphabetical, you've got to know the name of the plant anyway. Then you can look it up. Here you're in the area, you find, and we also put plants together in the book, arrange them together that look like each other. So you can't get confused. If you find something that's white and it's small, you look at the white and small pictures in the book. So it works that way. I just think it's so much easier for somebody who is not taxonomically trained to be able to find a book, to find a plant easily.
All right. And Graham, perhaps maybe you can also assist us with this question. It says, where else in the world do plants in this family occur? These particular ones that you're referring to in the biomes, yeah?
Well, none of them occur in other parts of the world, the South African ones, but other major centers are in South America. And that's, in fact, the richest area for Amaryllidaceae in the world. South Africa has the second most rich flora for Amaryllidaceae.
Wow, sure.
So you won't find any of our South African things anywhere else other than in Africa.
Yeah. Oh, that comes to tell us, how fortunate we are to live in this beautiful country that we find ourselves in. And I think just in general, and it's been so amazing. I mean, we still have, 90 plus individuals just joining us in this call, just displaying the level of interest and just appreciation that you've had. Many comments coming up saying, absolutely fantastic. And the beautiful collaborations that you have, Leigh, and, connecting with individuals like Graham, who are really subject matter experts, really talks about the type of quality that you put in your work. So we absolutely appreciate you for that. I'm just going to give the pair of you just 30 seconds each, 30-second bite. Just to tell us about future project, what's happening on your side, what can we look forward to, perhaps in short to medium term, let's say next year, in the next few years. And Graham, perhaps maybe you can do the same. Leigh, let's start with you.
I've been asking Graham for many years, to help me do a book on fungi of South Africa. But since there are 4,000 species, he's refused. So our collaborations are over unless he's willing to back down on that one. But otherwise, I'm going to do portraits, probably some more landscapes. I don't know. You'll see. I need a break.
And remember the challenge that you put forth. We want you to do self-portraits, and we want to see that. And we're sure going to call you back on this platform and say, let's start with that. Show us the money.
Okay, I'll do it.
So I'm actually studying at the moment. I'm working on Lachenalia, and I'll be doing a second edition of that book that I did in 2012, because I've described quite a few more species since then. So that's my next project.
Oh, awesome. And in terms of time frames, Graham, without putting too much pressure, what's the expected time of arrival?
It's quite a difficult one. I'd say possibly 2 to 3 years' time.
Wow. Sure.
Yeah.
No, definitely an awesome project to sink your teeth in, and something that we can all look forward to. I think to the both of you, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this platform. Just to remind everybody that is joining us on this call, and our friends, obviously, friends of the talk, you'll all receive a 15% discount on the amazing books that you see in front of your screen currently. Belinda, thank you so much from Straight for putting this up. Let me take this opportunity to thank all the partners that make this possible. Room to Grow, without Room to Grow, we wouldn't be able to do some of the amazing work that we do, being able to find individuals like yourself, Leigh, and, connecting with you, Graham. Let me take a special shout out also to Kathy Abbott, who always goes out of her way, just ensuring that we've got these amazing talks. And literally finding us this level of quality that we can all appreciate and enjoy. Again, let me say thanks to Straight for also making sure that we are streaming this amazing talks, and we're actually building an awesome database of this amazing talks. So we look forward to 40, 50, 60 years when we can look back at these talks, Leigh and Graham, and be able to appreciate some of the talent that's been displayed here this morning. So from my side and from our team back at Senbi, we couldn't be more appreciative of the pair of you. And there will be a time when we can all get together and just appreciate our Grahams of this world and our Leighs of this world. And we are happy that if we are not able to do so, this platform at least give us that opportunity to do so. So from my side, thank you very much. This has been an absolute enlightening presentation. Leigh, we are thankful for your life. We are thankful that you live to tell the tale and tell your story. And we really wish you many successes in future projects coming up. So without any waste of time, thank you, everybody. It's been an absolute pleasure. My name is John. Until we meet again in the next 2 weeks when we welcome another great speaker on this platform. Au revoir. Let's get ready for spring. I think it's awesome. Let's go out there and enjoy Mother Nature. So from myself, thank you very much, everybody. Graham and Leigh, thank you very much. Lots of love to both of you.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Okay.
See you next time.
Thanks, Graham.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Leigh.
Thanks, Belinda.
Yes.
Thanks, Belinda.
All right. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.